Hello and welcome to another edition of the Lana Del Rey Controversy News Network. Yes, I'm going to be touching on, of course, her new single from her upcoming album, Chemtrails Over the Country Club, off of the album of the same name, which is going to be coming out on March 21st, I believe. So in 2 months. And this is, of course, the second song we have gotten off of this album. We had Let Me Love You Like a Woman last November, or October, it was October. And I made a review of that video. So you can see that in the description with the link. And of course, I had some controversy that I had to discuss incoming from what she has been saying online. And it all started last summer. And I'm not going to really recap all of that. You can see my previous video if you are unaware, or you can just Google it on the interwebs. But there has been, of course, more controversy. Lana this time, I think, really stepped into it unnecessarily and preemptively trying to negate any criticism that might come her way regarding racism in particular. And this is a case of where you just should have kept your mouth shut. So Lana unveiled the album cover for Chemtrails, and it's this black and white image, and it's all of her friends, all these women sitting at like a picnic table. It's definitely evoking the country club aesthetic, although I think the back cover is more inducive of that, with the, women getting all gussied up and, her staring at them lovingly. I think it's a great shot, actually. The back cover, a lot of people have said would make a much better album cover than the front cover that we are given. There's a lot going on, for sure, in this front cover. It's a very loaded image, which I think, it's conceptually gives a lot of space for, this album to mean a lot of things. Lana Del Rey's album covers, I think, are always pretty intriguing. And especially her last album, Norman, I was in love with her album cover. I was in love with the colors and the way it pulled you in, the way it was referencing a Norman Rockwell painting. This album cover, to me, I've been doing these giant puzzles. I've been doing this illustrative puzzle of a painting by Steve Crisp called The Village Grocer. And in the image, you just got like so much going on, so many textures in the photo. It's a bit old-fashioned. It's definitely a bit 50s. And this album cover to me is giving me that kind of loaded imagery all in one, packing a punch. And, it's got character. I'll give it that. But what she chose to do was to comment on the fact, without anyone asking, without anyone calling her out on it, on Instagram, talking about how, yes, there are women of color in the photo. They're kind of more in the background, so they don't stand out quite as much. So yes, there is diversity, and that she has tons of women of color as friends, and more dubiously, she wades into it saying, a lot of my best friends have been rappers. I have had boyfriends who have been rappers. This is just such an uncomfortable statement to make about race for her, considering her past statements to lump people of color as rappers. Look, there are people who are going to more, contextually criticize and analyze the words she said in the discourse of race in society today. And I don't want to spend this whole video talking about that, but of course I do just need to bring it to the fore, talk about how, it ties into the fact that Lana, unfortunately, has become kind of hard to defend in the fact that she is clearly not learning that sometimes just keeping your mouth shut is actually sometimes a better course of action. People accuse her of glamorizing the 50s, and that is a negative thing, considering the fact that she's said things that can be deemed controversial, because I know Lana's heart. I really feel like I do, and I know that we should know she is not a Trump supporter. She has denounced Trump ever since he took office. She voted for Biden. She was very vocal about that. She, of course, talks about how Trump was a necessary evil for this country in another part of a recent interview. A lot of people have misconstrued what she's saying to sort of, not to sound like she's defending Trump, which, no, it's not what she's doing. I think she's echoing a sentiment that I've also, felt some way, in some form, that, Trump has unveiled the darkness of this country in a more overt way, which is allowing us to be more radicalized and to move forward in a more progressive direction than maybe we would have otherwise. Sometimes for real change to occur, you unfortunately have to really face and confront the worst of the society you live in. And so if we can take anything positive from Trump being in office, that's something we can, view it as like, well, it probably was what had to happen. I mean, it's what happened, so there's no use crying over spilled milk. Let's make positive out of this negative mess we were given. So I get where she was coming from, but I sympathize with her. But then at the same time, I feel like she, having a publicist, this should be something that she's a little bit, she's been in the industry for a while now. It's just it's a bit upsetting that she's becoming just so polarizing because of these statements that are a bit clumsy, or more than a bit clumsy, on topics that she clearly has not done quite the amount of research and potentially listening to people of color about. It's unfortunate. But I don't, people talk about this album rollout being extremely messy, and it's unfortunate because it's overshadowing the art. Lana is an artist that, I mean, it would take a lot for me to not listen to her music because of something she said or did, because I just love the vibe and I love the music and the storytelling and the poetry. And this album looks to be no different. Chemtrails, the single we were getting, which did get a very lavish, high budget music video, which we haven't quite seen from her in quite some time, that really took a turn that I don't think any of us were expecting. We were expecting the pearls and, the vintage cars and rolling up in the sun and the girls on the beach and that kind of vibe. We were expecting that. And then it takes a very sort of Teen Wolf MTV American Horror Story Witch of the Woods, Howl at the Moon vibe, which I think is very alluding to the lyric that she sings, "My Cancer is sun, my Leo is moon." And so she is alluding to the fact that Leo is technically a lion, but people maybe conflate it with dogs or wolves. So she's using that to howl at the moon. I'm guessing that's where she's coming from with that. Also, that, there's this unbridled energy that Leos are, full of, and that comes out at night. So she's alluding to that, don't judge a book by its cover. A Cancer you might consider to be a lot more tepid and, easygoing and soft and introspective. But at night, this other energy comes out. And I think that's what she's trying to show with the video and the juxtaposition of the, idyllic daytime imagery and the sort of more arcane nighttime imagery. Lycanthrope, is that the right word? Yes, werewolf energy that she's showing for the nighttime. This song is quite sleepy in its melody, which, I kind of expect from her music. Some people say you've heard one song, you've heard them all. And so the melody leaves a little bit to be desired, but it's also a song that I think that, again, is trying to center the lyrics. So I think that that's more of the point. And the lyrics have a specificity that I think is really evocative for the overall theme she's trying to conjure up. Meet you for coffee at the elementary schools. We laugh about nothing as the summer gets cool. It's beautiful. LSD, normality settles down over me. I'm not bored or unhappy. I'm still so strange and wild. You're in the wind, I'm in the water. Nobody's son, nobody's daughter. Watching the chemtrails over the country club. Suburbia, the Brentwood market. What to do next? Maybe we'll love it. White picket, chemtrails over the country club. And also the opening phrase that sort of, I think, is the overall tagline of the record. There's nothing wrong contemplating God under the chemtrails over the country club. And so this album seems to be, but more importantly, this song seems to be talking about this rhythm that one would want to fall into, that can be quite idyllic in the sort of white picket fence world of glamorized 50s America or Americana, which is something that I think the suburbs are still in very much the idealized form a snapshot of even today, with the, nuclear family and the picnics and, the happy children going to going to school. It's like this very, whimsical, perfectly average day to day middle class to wealthy upper middle class existence. And she's pontificating on the allure and sweetness of a life like that, while alluding to the fact that there is something bigger than all of this. The image of the country club with chemtrails over top. For those who are not familiar, chemtrails are these lines of pollution, so to speak, or exhaust, that look like clouds that airplanes create. And unfortunately, I do believe they are pretty harmful to the atmosphere. But conspiracies go way deeper than that. It's believed that chemtrails are the cause of a lot of surveillance, a lot of weather control, public health, um, crop growth, things that, really are sort of like the government is heavy handedly controlling and manipulating the environment and us as a species. They're, in the most esoteric way, chemtrails are viewed as a manifestation of literally frequency blocking higher energy from entering the Earth's atmosphere. So this is a very loaded image for me, and I think that it's fascinating that she's exploring it. It's sort of like dropping that bomb and just sort of like going, woo, there's a lot more to this to unpack than she even really goes into in the lyrics. But I think that that's the whole point. This bucolic, middle class, upper middle class existence is guarded over by something potentially more sinister, and overarching, that might not necessarily be a benevolent God that, a lot of these people who tend to be white Christian would subscribe to. I think that that's an image and a juxtaposition that I'm very fascinated by, and it's one of the reasons why I think that that album title is so brilliant. Um, you know, Lana is Lana is very much diving fully into 50s white culture and the sort of after, the tributaries of that we see in just, like I said, upper middle class society. And she is unapologetically exploring that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. She's a white woman. She's always been interested in the 50s and 60s, and she wants to run with that. And as an aesthetic, I think it's very interesting. But, it does make it that her constantly trying to make it an issue of, I see all color and I'm not, racist. And it's drawing attention to the fact that, yeah, the people of color may find her music not quite to their taste because of the images it might conjure up for them, that it does appear very classist, that it's, centering white women, that it's centering white middle class, upper middle class existence and living, and the provincial, old-fashioned imperialism that much very much the backbone of American society unfortunately has been intermingled with, which is unfortunate, which is very much racism. So because of her proximity to that, it makes everything she says about race, especially if she's not wording it well at all, very kind of broad stroking it, brushing it under the rug, not centering Black voices, it makes it quite, in very much, it makes it problematic to, I think, a lot of people of color. And so, unfortunately, I think that she's, quite happy to just stay in her lane, and there's nothing wrong with that. She's somewhat self aware, but unfortunately, I don't think she's quite at that awareness of what she says and her placement within pop culture, and her fan base, and within the discourse that we're having about race today, that she is fully aware of the impact of her words, and coupled that with also the themes and imagery that her music plays off of. And that's what I'm going to say about that. In the comments, people can, better dissect and analyze all of this more succinctly. As you know, being succinct is not something I am good at. I was thinking, oh, this review is only going to be 5 minutes, and here I am at 18 minutes. So this is what we're getting. Also, I do have to touch on, again, another big part of the controversy is this mesh mask that she keeps wearing. She wore it at a book signing in the fall, and a lot of fans were upset because she was photographed in that, and now she's wearing it in this music video. She says that there is plastic underneath the mesh, and that, it's very common, very safe alternative to the other kinds of cloth masks that we're used to seeing. Whether there is plastic or not, I'm of the mind to believe that there probably is plastic under there, that Lana is not that stupid, because, what's the point of a mask if there is holes all over it, right? But even if there is, it is very difficult to see. It's very much completely invisible, and the image that it's giving off, it's not a good influence, when we're having still some anti-masker, people in the middle, very height of this pandemic, glamorizing what apparently looks like a mask with holes all over it, even if there is plastic underneath, is going to give people, some of them, the wrong idea. Hopefully most people are not going to get the wrong idea from this, but it's a very irresponsible image to be, you know, advertising at this time. This is a moment where, you have to sacrifice aesthetic for public good. And I know that maybe she thinks a mesh mask looks more aesthetically in line with what she wants to give off with her, fashion for this era. But, I'm afraid you got to make compromises here for the overall image. And I think that that's unfortunately something that I guess Lana just doesn't care. I want to give her the benefit of the doubt all the time. Some people have a harder time with that because of how much of a fan I am of her music. And like I said, I have to believe it because it's the only way I can stay sane. Because otherwise, it's just like, Lana, what are you doing? There has to be plastic under there, but it doesn't look like there is, and that's a huge problem. So I don't know what to say about that. It's one of those things where I'm just trying to look over it and just like be into the music, but I mean, at the same time, it's not responsible to just completely ignore. People need to be talking about this. Anyway, very excited for the album. I'll talk more about all of this probably in that review. I won't be reviewing any of more of songs she might release up until that date in March, so stay tuned for that, but no more track reviews until then from this record. I will see you all in my next review. I hope you all have a wonderful, blessed day. Peace, love, and light. Bye.